I know the title is a bit weird, but this was the best way I found to translate what was said. Obligatory apologies for bad grammar and/or spelling. English is not my first language. I'm a 44-year-old man. My husband is 40 years old, been married for 20 years, together for 22, and our adoptive son is 24 years old. He's Black, and we're not. I'm only mentioning this because it's relevant to the story later. This does not take place in the US. Let me give a little bit of background to the situation. About 19 years ago, my husband and I had been driving on a highway, back from a small vacation, when along a particularly long stretch of road, absolutely no buildings around, only a ton of grass and hills as far as the eye could see, we spotted a little boy just sitting by the side of the road. Like I mentioned, there was nothing around for miles, and no cars close to where the boy was, so we decided to stop and see if everything was okay. When we got closer to the boy, let's call him Jason, fake name, it was very easy to see he was dirty and malnourished since the only thing he had on were some diapers. He was so small it didn't look like he could be older than 3. Later found out he was actually 5. We asked him why he was alone, and he told us that Mommy and Daddy put him here and told him to wait. There was no cell signal in the area, so we did the sensible thing and brought him back to town to the nearest police station. To make a long story short, Child Protective Services was called. We discovered his parents were some druggies that were on the run from a felony. The only other relative Jason had was his grandmother, who was very mentally ill and couldn't take care of him, and we felt bad. He went into foster care soon after, but we felt bad for the kid and kept in touch with his caseworker. I had, still do, an extremely well-paying job at the time, and could easily afford a decent lifestyle for a small family. So after a few months of discussions between ourselves, the caseworker, and some bureaucracy, we formally adopted Jason. Now onto the situation. About 3 years ago, Jason's parents were released from prison on parole. They contacted him not long after in hopes of reconnecting. Prior to that, they'd sent him a few odd letters here or there, but nothing really substantial. At first, he was hesitant to talk to them, but ended up caving and meeting them for lunch one day. I'll admit that a part of me was a bit jealous and apprehensive of what could happen. But I could see that it really was something that my son wanted to do, so for his sake, I swallowed those feelings and supported him through it. It wasn't very long, about 3 months, I think, that he started to pull away from us. At first, I chalked it up to him being excited to actually talk to his biological parents after so long, talk about what had been going on in his life, spend some time with them, etc. It started to bother me when he'd cancel plans with us last minute because Mom had an emergency, or Dad really needs me to help him with something today, or whatever other excuse he could come up with. He used to come over to our house at least once a week, call every day or so, but now we were lucky if he even came by that month. Again, I thought that was just temporary, that he was just excited, and soon enough he'd start spending some time with us again. We were overjoyed when he invited us over to dinner one night. It was supposed to be a family gathering, us and his biological parents and his wife, girlfriend at the time. I wasn't exactly keen on meeting the people that had left my son for dead on the side of the road, but decided to give them the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they'd atoned and changed. Besides, he's our son, and we love him. We had to at least try. To say the dinner was a disaster is an understatement. His biological mom was extremely rude to me and my husband the entire night, making passive-aggressive, hateful, and discriminatory remarks every chance she got. His father was much the same. It all came to a head when she straight up called us the F word and threw a glass at my husband. A screaming match followed, and we left soon after. The next day, Jason apologized profusely and promised they'd never do something like that again. I told him that neither my husband nor I wanted to have anything to do with them and would appreciate if he understood that. He seemed to, but continued to pull away over the next few months. And that leads to what happened last week. Jason proposed to his girlfriend about 9 months back and has been preparing for the wedding since. Of course, we were overjoyed for him. But a few months went by and no invitation came. Every time we asked, Jason would say they hadn't been sent out yet and changed the subject. Well, last week, my husband saw a Twitter post from one of Jason's friends, his groomsmen, that went a few weeks back, with the invitation in hand. We confronted Jason about it the next time he came over, only for him to drop the bomb on us that we hadn't been invited. We asked why, and he said his parents didn't want us there and wouldn't come if we did. I was freaking furious. I asked him how could he choose those pieces of trash over us? Why were they so important? What did we do to deserve this kind of treatment? His answer? They understand me better. They're my people. At that point, my husband was crying, asking how he could do this. I've only ever been truly angry a few times in life, and this moment managed to top all of them. I threw him out right then and there and told him to never come back. I told him he wasn't our son anymore. I spent the rest of the day hugging my husband and trying to calm him down. The next day, I canceled everything we'd paid for the wedding, which was basically everything important, even the things we couldn't get a refund on. Of course, Jason had the gall to call and scream at me, asking how I could do that to him, where he would find replacements for a wedding that was supposed to happen only a few months from now. I told him I didn't give a shoot and said, maybe you should ask those 2 leeches you call parents for some help. 19 years. 19 freaking years of my goddamn life spent raising and loving a kid that I considered my own son, only to be treated like garbage. Giving blood, sweat, and tears so he would have a good life, all the love we could possibly give, and that's what we get as a reward. As for why I'm asking if I'm the AH, some people have been calling and messaging us, mostly Jason's friends and a few of our family members, calling us heartless and monsters for doing what we did to him. And that's honestly got me questioning if I went a bit too far in anger. After all, parents are supposed to love unconditionally, right? But if so, how do we ever get over something like this? How can we deal with this feeling of betrayal? Are we justified in feeling like that? So, am I the idiot? Edit. I've added a comment for further clarification of a few points I've seen asked in the comments and my PMs. Please refer to that if you have any questions. Edit 2. I'm seeing quite a few discriminatory comments in this post, and to the people that are making them, I have this to say. Frick you. Frick off with that rhetoric. I do not appreciate it and would rather if you guys left. Now for a few comments before the update, comment 1. Not the idiot, I'm sincerely sorry for your loss. This is every adoptive parent's worst nightmare. The difference in race, the homophobia of his birth parents, I wonder if they are as significant as you think they are to Jason. Your son has gotten caught up in the fantasy of being loved and wanted by the birth parents who abandoned him. They don't understand him better. They don't know him at all. But he wants them to. I know you have been hurt deeply, and he deserves the natural consequences of his choices. It's beyond chutzpah to think you'd pay for a wedding you're not even invited to. I'd ask people who are calling you heartless how they would suggest you react to being told they weren't going to be included in their child's wedding and be completely rejected in favor of bio parents who abandoned him. Jason's made a choice. Why aren't they calling out Jason for abandoning the parents who raised and loved him his whole life, literally saved his life, in favor of his people who left him on the side of the road to die? And for Jason to still expect you to pay for a wedding you're not allowed to attend is him being a greedy, selfish bastard. You and your husband may want to get therapy because whether Jason tries to come back or not, I can't imagine how you'd move on from what he's done. I wish you clarity and peace. Update me. Comment 2. Not the idiot. While a lot of people keep saying Jason is young and naive, at 24 he has a mind of his own and can make grown-up decisions, including getting married and prioritizing who he wanted there. He knows what he's doing. His bio parents left him for dead. That's their true identity. Even at the dinner party, they only held back for as long as they could. Because let's face it, they saw money signs. Nobody cared OP, and his husband weren't invited to the wedding until they stopped paying for it. So anyone who calls, giving you grief, is welcome to pay for it. Also, Jason saying they understood him better means he shares the same views as them. OP, make sure any wills or beneficiaries are updated to exclude Jason, because his bio parents seem the type to do something stupid and even come after and threaten you. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post and for all the support and advice you gave. It's been a tough few days since then, and I wanted to give you all an update on what's been happening. After I threw Jason out and canceled everything for the wedding, things got even worse. The next day, Jason showed up at our house with his biological parents, demanding to talk to us. I didn't want to let them in, but my husband convinced me that we should at least hear what they had to say. As soon as they were inside, Jason's biological mother started screaming at us, calling us every name in the book. She said we had no right to cancel the wedding and that we were just jealous of her relationship with Jason. His father wasn't much better, threatening to sue us for the money we had spent on the wedding. I tried to stay calm, but it was hard. I told them that we had every right to cancel the wedding since we were the ones paying for it. I also reminded them that they had abandoned Jason on the side of the road all those years ago, and that we were the ones who had raised him and loved him unconditionally. That's when Jason spoke up. He said that we had never really loved him, and that we had only adopted him to make ourselves look good. He said that his biological parents understood him in a way that we never could, and that he was done with us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything we had done for him, this is how he repaid us. I lost it. I started yelling at him, telling him how ungrateful he was and how much we had sacrificed for him. My husband tried to calm me down, but I was too angry. Eventually, Jason and his parents left, but not before his mother threw a vase at me. It missed, but it shattered on the floor, leaving a mess for us to clean up. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat or sleep, and I spent most of my time crying. My husband tried to comfort me, but he was just as devastated as I was. We had lost our son, and it felt like a piece of our hearts had been ripped out. To make matters worse, we started getting harassed by Jason's friends and family. They would call us at all hours of the day and night, leaving nasty messages and threatening us. Some of them even showed up at our house, banging on the door and yelling at us. We tried to ignore it, but it was getting to be too much. We were afraid to leave the house, and we were constantly on edge. I started having panic attacks, and my husband had to take time off work to stay with me. Finally, we decided that we needed to get away for a while. We packed our bags and drove to a cabin in the woods that belonged to a friend of ours. It was peaceful there, and we were able to take some time to process everything that had happened. As we talked, we realized that there had been signs that something was wrong for a while. Jason had always been a bit distant, and he had never really opened up to us about his feelings. We had chalked it up to him being a typical teenager, but now we wondered if there was more to it than that. We also realized that we had made some mistakes. We had been so focused on giving Jason a good life that we had neglected our own relationship. We had stopped going on dates and spending time together, and we had let our communication break down. We made a promise to each other that we would work on our marriage and that we would be there for each other no matter what. We also decided that we needed to set some boundaries with Jason and his biological parents. We still loved him, but we couldn't let him treat us like this anymore. When we got back home, we sent Jason a letter. In it, we told him that we loved him and that we would always be there for him, but that we needed some space. We said that we were willing to work on our relationship with him, but that it had to be on our terms. We also made it clear that we wanted nothing to do with his biological parents. It's been a few days since we sent the letter, and we haven't heard back from Jason yet. I don't know if we ever will, but I do know that we did the right thing. We have to protect ourselves and our marriage, even if it means losing our son. Thanks again for all your support. It means a lot to us. Am I the idiot for sarcastically wishing my husband a happy Father's Day after he slept through Mother's Day, and then gave me the silent treatment? This morning, I woke up early to order myself coffee so he could take our son to pick it up and surprise me. Then they went to the grocery store and thoughtfully picked out my favorite breakfast and came home. My husband made half of the breakfast and then asked me to make the other half. No problem. He acknowledged that he was asking me to do the work and still taking credit for the benefit of our kids' experience and memories. It was no problem until he went upstairs to go to the bathroom, and after 45 minutes, I walked upstairs to check on him, and he was asleep in our bed. He slept the entire afternoon. Later that day, I was doing the absolute mountain of dishes, my third load for the day. That's another story. And he asked me to make a grocery list. I asked if he could please make the list because I am in the middle of doing the dishes, and further tried to coax him by using Mother's Day in a playful way. I really didn't want to drop what I was doing to look in the fridge he was already standing right in front of to tell him what we needed for dinner. He knows what the ingredients are. He could easily look himself. But he insisted I help him. I was super frustrated, So I took a deep breath, washed and dried my hands, and then opened the fridge and started telling him what we need. He could sense my frustration and called me on it. I explained that I was really hoping he could make a list himself just this once, because I was in the middle of doing the dishes. I explained that when I make a grocery list, I just look at what we have and write down what we don't have, and I didn't understand why he needed my help. He started talking over me to say if I had a problem making a grocery list with him, I should just have told him. I told him that I did communicate that with him. He doubled down and told me that I need to learn some patience. I smiled and said, "Happy Father's Day," because it was the nicest thing I could think to say. That completely set him off. He went off on me, refused to get ingredients to make our dinner, bought dinner for only himself and our kids, and has been giving me the silent treatment for over an hour. He says I went too far. Am I the idiot? ETA. Wow, I did not realize I was going to wake up to so much to read. Thank you for all of your feedback. I have been enjoying my self-brewed coffee this morning and taking in your responses. I have a lot to look over and think about. I know divorce is the obvious answer. Edit 2. No, divorce isn't the obvious answer for this specific incident. Edit 3. I mean, the idea of divorce is not solely based on this one specific incident. Several people have commented thinking everyone is jumping to divorce based on this one situation. It is more complex than this one day. No, I'm not using Reddit as a poll for whether or not to leave my marriage. Teal how to make Reddit paragraphs. Both of our mothers are dead, unfortunately. Our children are 6 and under. It is common for parents to help and facilitate the day. 6-year-olds and toddlers can't be responsible for celebrating their parents. I didn't expect anything from him. I know it's just a Hallmark consumerism holiday. People who have commented are correct in saying that this incident is just representative of every other day, but magnified by the fact that Mother's Day was a particularly shitty day to choose to be particularly shitty. I felt like maybe I was TA for making the petty comment. I am ND, and sometimes I have trouble picking up on if I did something wrong that I maybe didn't realize was wrong to say or do. I appreciate all of the anecdotes of your strength and ability to move forward. After leaving an exhausting marriage, it is inspiring. Edit/answers to your questions. Update 4. Since Sunday, I have not lifted a single finger for baby Sinclair, my internal nickname for him. Unless it directly impacts our kids, every time he requests my help or to do something for him that he can do himself, I just use my absolute sweetest voice, let him know he doesn't need my help and I believe in his ability to complete the task himself. Then I smile and walk away. The third time I did this, he said I was making him uneasy. I could not help but to LOL, which made him announce that he felt more uneasy. I know it wasn't kind, but I calmly told him he is a pathetic human. I told him I'm sorry it has to be me, but someone in his life needs to tell him to grow the frick up. I told him I care about him and I love him, but I will not tolerate being treated with disrespect even one more day. He said I am hurtful. The actual audacity. I spared the divorce conversation for safety and because I have said many times before I want to leave, and financially it isn't possible right now. Side note, I tried to leave last year because he was making me feel unsafe and his behavior was erratic. I went to the emergency room in a mental breakdown and told them about the abuse, which they noted in detail on my file. They asked about any plans to escape, and I told them I had it covered and answered their questions about my plan. I had been planning for our escape for a year leading up to this. They told me they had to document the reported abuse in my file. I asked them to check my chart to make sure it is not tied to his account. They looked at it in front of me and said they made sure he wasn't on my emergency contacts or attached to my chart in any way. But then, guess who got an email with my chart notes detailing his abuse and my exit plan before I even got home? I had to cool things down and start over with a new plan that I kept entirely to myself. At this point, though, he knew I had saved up money to leave, so most of my savings was depleted within a couple of months. I eventually left with our kids with far less savings, and it didn't take long for me to realize I could not sustain the cost of my original bills, still in my name, and new bills in addition to legal assistance, and the overall cost of starting over. Our leaving caused him to spiral, and he went back to therapy. Soon after, we started to dip our toes into visiting each other, mostly because I didn't want to leave our kids with him. We stuck to outdoor public activities as a family. He has always been able to wear me down and talk me out of a divorce, and this ended up no differently. Even though I know I'm not an anomaly, I felt ashamed and like a complete failure for going back. Surprisingly, he never actually changed, per S. End of side note, anyway. Back to present day. I began to gray rock to throw off his cycle of attempting to rope me back into the argument from the other day. I have calmly listened to him gush over his love for our family, and how much he loves and appreciates me and thinks I am an amazing mom. He says he loves me, but all I hear in my head is his voice screaming "fucking witch" at me. It all sounds so obviously disingenuous. I told him his words mean literally nothing while his behavior is the same. It's like saying waffles have legs. It sounds unbelievable, and if I don't see it with my own eyes, I'm not believing it. I told him regardless of if in the end we stay together or not, we need to go back to therapy as a duo and separately. I told him he needs to take steps today to move forward with therapy and treating his mental health appropriately. He agreed, but no evidence of walking waffles yet. I am surprised at my ability to completely refuse to do anything he can do himself. I'm more surprised that he's actually doing the tasks himself. I have tried this before, and he ultimately bullies me into doing the task. Not this time. He keeps complaining about his results in ways that are so juvenile and manipulative, always leaving the impression that if I had just done it for him, it would have been done correctly. I just smile and tell him he did a good job with the task, and tell him that it sounds like he needs more practice, and eventually it will become second nature. I am feeling his attempts to make me miserable, but it is rolling right off of me. At least for now. I cannot express enough how much I appreciate the support and validation here. I appreciate the married people who have shared what their day was like on Sunday and every day as a healthy couple. For those of you who have asked why I am taking to the internet with this in the first place, I have been isolated from my circle for so long my relationships no longer exist. I have limited family period and no family nearby. My mom is dead. My dad sucks. My siblings mostly suck. I have no friends. I work virtually and don't have friendships with my coworkers because we rarely socialize and have opportunities to bond. I don't have opportunities to interact with adults very often. Isn't that the beauty of the internet? Despite my logical brain, years of gaslighting along with my neurodivergence have made it sometimes feel impossible to trust my judgment. If you are offended by me posting this and have taken the time to voice your disgust for me in my post, I just want to let you know I have processed your complaints and directed them to the correct department. Thank you for your feedback. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So I skimmed your post history, and I don't think your priority should be on whether you are the jerk or whatever. Your husband is hurtful. You are in danger, and your children are traumatized already. You need to start working towards escape and thinking about safety, not your abuser's feelings. I know you think you can't leave right now, but you should at least start working towards it. Your children are learning right now that hurtful relationships are okay. Comment 2. Not the idiot, and he is a clown. For Father's Day, wake up and treat yourself and then leave him with the kids and responsibility. Tell him you wanted his gift to mirror the one you received for Mother's Day and that you're willing to make dinner for the children, just like he did for you. Now, for the update. Thank you for sharing your update. It's been a challenging few months since Mother's Day, and I'm sorry to hear about the ongoing struggles in your marriage. 3 months ago, after the Mother's Day incident, you started to stand your ground and refused to do tasks for your husband that he could easily do himself. At first, he seemed to comply and began doing these tasks on his own, albeit with constant complaints and attempts to manipulate you into taking over. However, your resolve remained strong, and you continued to encourage him to practice and improve his skills. Despite agreeing to go back to therapy together and separately, your husband has yet to take any concrete steps towards improving his mental health. His words of love and appreciation for you and your family ring hollow in the face of his unchanged behavior. The memory of him screaming "fucking witch" at you still echoes in your mind, making it difficult to trust his sincerity. As you reflect on your past attempts to leave the marriage, you recall the challenges you faced. Last year, when you sought help at the emergency room after feeling unsafe due to your husband's erratic behavior, your plan to escape was inadvertently revealed to him through a breach in patient confidentiality. This setback forced you to start over with a new plan, which you kept entirely to yourself. However, your husband's awareness of your intentions led to the depletion of your savings, making it even more difficult to sustain the costs of starting over when you eventually left with your children. The isolation from your support system has been a significant factor in your struggle. With limited family support, no nearby friends, and a virtual work environment that hinders opportunities for adult interaction and bonding, you've found yourself relying on the internet for validation and support. Years of gaslighting and your neurodivergence have made it challenging to trust your own judgment at times. Looking back, you realize that your husband's mistake on Mother's Day was just the tipping point in a long history of disrespect and manipulation. His inability to take responsibility for his actions and his constant demands for your help, even when you were already overwhelmed with household tasks, have taken a toll on your mental and emotional well-being. As you navigate this difficult situation, it's essential to prioritize your safety and the well-being of your children. Continue to seek support through online communities, and consider reaching out to local organizations that provide assistance to individuals in hurtful relationships. Remember that you are not alone, and there are people who understand and can help you through this challenging time. While the path forward may not be clear, trust in your strength and resilience. You have already shown incredible courage by standing up for yourself and refusing to tolerate disrespect. Keep focusing on your personal growth and the well-being of your children, and know that you deserve to be treated with love, respect, and equality in your relationships. Thank you for sharing your story and allowing us to be a part of your journey. We are here to support you and remind you of your worth and the strength you possess to overcome these challenges. Am I the idiot for crying at a genocide prison and making my wife uncomfortable? I am a 28-year-old man and my wife is 29 years old. We recently visited Cambodia. I booked the trip for our 4th wedding anniversary. On our last day there, we decided to visit a genocide prison in Phnom Penh called S21. We were warned by our tour guide that the place wasn't for the faint of heart. The prison was used by the Khmer Rouge to massacre thousands of innocent civilians who were deemed as too smart or intellectual during the rule of Pol Pot. I remember seeing torture chambers where they would beat people to death with chains. They didn't hide any of the brutality. The pictures on the walls literally looked like something straight out of Live Leak. In one of the prison cells, there was dried-up blood on the floor from presumably the captive held there all those years ago. I remember walking past a tree called The Ending, the life of tree. They took kids as young as 3 years old and would bash their heads into it until they died. When I read that, I started sobbing. I visualized everything in my head and felt for the kids who had to watch their siblings or friends get massacred in front of them. My wife saw me crying, and instead of comforting me, she just gave me this weird look. After a while, she did come hug me and asked if something was wrong. I just pointed to the exit and we left after that. I just couldn't take it anymore. While in our taxi, she asked me if I was seriously crying. I nodded and kept quiet. I was still pretty shaken up by the things I just read and saw. That was last week, and there has been tension between us ever since. She tries to pick fights with me for no reason and seems dismissive and disrespectful. A few days ago, I came home exhausted from work, and she asked me if I could do the laundry that day. I told her I would do it tomorrow and just wanted to relax for a bit. She got mad and told me that she didn't know she was marrying a woman and stormed off. She has never acted like this before our trip. I lost it last night after she tried to pick another fight with me and confronted her about her behavior over the past week. I asked her if all of this had to do with me crying. She tried denying it at first, but after a while she just went silent for a few moments and then started nodding while keeping her head down. I asked her why, and she claimed that humanity has done worse in the past, and she feels weird about me crying over kids who have nothing to do with me. She also told me that she isn't a therapist, and she felt uncomfortable and disappointed in me for shedding tears over something that happens all the time. She saw me getting mad at her comments and tried backpedaling and apologizing, but I just couldn't take it anymore and went to bed in our guest room. This was only the second time she has ever seen me cry. The first was when my best friend lost his life to a drunk driver. To the men out there, have you experienced anything similar with your significant other? I'm just sort of lost for words. I can't make sense of anything right now. I don't know who I can confide in with this, so that's why I'm posting here. I just need a place to vent. I'm seriously considering divorce, but my brother claims that I should have known better and shouldn't have let her see me like that. If I divorce her without trying couples counseling, I am most definitely a jerk. Could I have done something better to make her feel less uncomfortable? How would you guys move forward in this situation? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Please don't do this to yourself. Crying is a very good thing for you. It releases chemicals that help you cope with the feelings, and it can be very liberating. You deserve a partner who supports you, lets you cry, and does not bully you for it. Imagine if you fell into hard times and got depressed. Can you imagine her giving you the support and love you'd need? Or would she help dig an even bigger hole for you? Comment 2. Wow, not the idiot. I am a woman. Please, for the men out there, stop feeling like crying is a weakness. I am sorry society and your very wife made you think you can't show your emotions. Crying over this very sensitive topic is a very humane thing to do. If anything, I would have loved you more after this visit. If anything, your wife's reaction is more troublesome. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been about a month since my last post, and I wanted to give you all an update on what's been going on. First off, thanks for all the support and advice you gave me last time. It really helped me put things into perspective. So after that night in the guest room, my wife and I had a long talk the next morning. She apologized for her behavior and said she was just caught off guard by seeing me cry like that. I tried to explain to her why it affected me so much, but she still seemed a bit dismissive about the whole thing. We agreed to try couples counseling to work through our issues. We had our first session a week later, and it was pretty intense. The therapist had us dig deep into our pasts and how we were raised. It turns out my wife grew up in a household where showing emotion was seen as a sign of weakness. Her dad was always telling her and her siblings to toughen up and not let things get to them. I guess that explains her reaction to me crying. But here's where things took a turn for the worse. During our second session, the therapist asked us about our trip to Cambodia and how it affected us. I started talking about the ending the life of Tree and how it made me feel. But my wife just sat there with this blank expression on her face. When the therapist asked her to share her thoughts, she just shrugged and said, I don't know, it was sad, but it's not like we can do anything about it now. I was shocked. How could she be so cold about something like that? The therapist tried to get her to open up more, but she just shut down and refused to talk. We left the session feeling more distant than ever. Over the next few weeks, things just kept getting worse. My wife started staying out late with her friends and coming home drunk. She'd pick fights with me over the smallest things and then storm out of the house. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just kept saying that she needed space and that I was being too clingy. One night, I came home from work to find her packing a suitcase. She told me that she was going to stay with her sister for a while and that she needed time to think. I begged her to stay and work things out, but she just shook her head and said, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. As she walked out the door, I felt like my world was crumbling around me. I couldn't believe that this was happening. We'd been together for 6 years, and now it was all falling apart. I tried to give her the space she needed, but after a week of not hearing from her, I started to worry. I called her sister to see if she knew anything, but she just told me that my wife needed time to figure things out on her own. It's been 3 weeks since she left, and I still haven't heard from her. I've tried calling and texting, but she won't respond. I'm starting to think that maybe this is the end for us. Looking back, I can't help but wonder if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I hadn't cried in front of her, or if I had been more understanding of her upbringing, things would have turned out differently. But at the same time, I don't think I should have to apologize for showing emotion or being affected by something as horrific as the ending the life of Tree. I'm not sure what the future holds for us, but I know that I can't keep living like this. The uncertainty and the pain are just too much to bear. I'm considering filing for divorce, but part of me still hopes that she'll come back and we can work things out. Anyway, that's where things stand right now. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It means a lot to me to have a place where I can vent and get some perspective on things. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!